Good afternoon, members of the media. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this joint press conference, which is going to involve, of course, the Bermuda Police Service and the Road Safety Council of Bermuda. We're going to hear first from the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Stephen Corbishley, and then the Chairman of the Road Safety Council, Mr. Dennis Lister III. And, of course, we're going to be addressing the current spate of road traffic incidents which we've been faced with. Mr. Commissioner.
Afternoon, members of the media. I want to take the opportunity just really to talk about our current situation in regards to road traffic collisions and my extreme concern as Commissioner to some of the matters that are taking place on the roads in Bermuda, not least with remembrance of those that have lost their lives, and my thoughts are with the families at this clearly very difficult time. So far in Bermuda, we have seen 6 fatalities for this calendar year. That is the same number for the whole of 12 months in 2020. Most concerningly, for serious injuries, we saw a total of 83 in 2020. So injuries that will happen on the road that are deemed serious. And so far this year, bearing in mind that we're only halfway through this calendar year, we see 130. So it's quite obvious through statistics and what we know as a community that there is a concerning and dangerous level of driver behaviour currently taking place on the roads. The Bermuda Police Service uses data, and we look at what takes place to target smartly where our resources are best placed. And in the past, we've seen the parish of Pembroke being the hotspot area, but this year it's changed. It appears to be in different parts of the island. And as I say, we will approach this issue intelligently and through data, but the nature of driving and riding bikes is becoming extremely concerning, and one only needs to look on social media to see that concern very, very clearly. We're currently going through a process at the moment of reviewing our road policing strategy and indeed our road policing unit. And indeed, we are looking to grow that unit to deal with some of the challenge that we face on the road. Because from the BPS's perspective, our role is enforcement, and people will be taken to court, and we will work in partnership with the courts, and where appropriate, stern sentences should be given to get this message across. In turn, we will work with government around some of the environmental factors, and certainly the help of the Road Safety Partnership is absolutely key in that regard. How do we design roads to be safe, to encourage speed to be reduced, to get people to ride in a way that's considerate to others? And that may result in certain locations, as we have seen in speed calming, it may result in the use of speed cameras. But this will affect all of us. It will affect all of us as road users. And all of us need to consider the speed that we drive and ride on the road. Because I don't think any of us can hand on heart say that we drive within the speed limit every day. But there is a minority that drive in a reckless way. And I'm sure each and every person that is watching this, reading this or otherwise, has seen probably today an act of incredible stupidity, an act of incredible carelessness, and indeed acts of dangerousness by people using motorcycles and sometimes using cars. And the point that I want to raise is that the police, the government, the Road Safety Council and others are working as hard as they can. But what sits within this is personal responsibility. The personal responsibility that when you take out a mode of transport, whether it be 2 wheels or 4 wheels, you have your personal safety to protect, but more so you have the personal safety of others to protect. And the police service will educate and will direct and will communicate, but we need to enforce more. But it can't be done against the public, it needs to be done with the public. So my appeal today is for people to really do consider how they drive and how they ride their bikes. Because very sadly, very tragically, and in very real terms, people are dying as a result of people's behaviour. People are becoming more seriously injured than ever before, and certainly compared to last year. And there needs to be this recognition across all communities that this is a serious problem that we need to respond to. At the moment, the BPS is supporting families of those that have lost loved ones. And obviously we had the tragedy at Napton Hill last week, and we also had the matter a few weeks ago with the young 16-year-old girl who lost her life. But that's not a situation I want my police officers to be. I don't want them looking after families that have lost people. I want us to be out on the roads protecting people and giving guidance and getting Bermuda to be a safe place. It is safe from certain parts of crime. We're seeing crime falling, but it's not becoming safe on our roads. And for me, this is a critical issue that we need to address, and we need to work closely to change the current situation. I'll invite my colleague across, and then I'm happy to take questions.
Good afternoon today to the media. The Bermuda Road Safety Council firstly wants to extend our serious condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Rashay Williams. Our thoughts and prayers are with you during this difficult time. Losing a loved one is never easy, but in this case is even more tragic as it was a result of a hit and run. No family deserves to hear of losing a loved one in this manner. We also like to send our prayers to the young lady and also to her family who was involved in the hit and run collision over the weekend. We wish you a speedy and full recovery. To the driver of that vehicle that left the scene of the accident, we encourage you to do the right thing and come forward. Again, we ask that if there were people in the area at the time of the incident or nearby residents who may have camera footage, to contact the police and provide information that can help solve this case. Recently, we have seen an increase in the number of hit-and-run collisions, which is alarming to the Bermuda Road Safety Council. The motoring public must know that it is an offense under the Road Traffic Act 1947 if you leave the scene of a collision that results in injury to a person, domestic animal, or causes damage to property. Such collisions must be reported to the police, and you must remain at the scene until they arrive. Section 42 of the Road Traffic Act 1947 states, duty in case of accident. 1. If, owing to the operation or presence of a vehicle on a road, including any private road, any accident occurs causing injury to any person, domestic animal, or property, A, the driver of the vehicle shall immediately stop the vehicle. And if, 2, any person without reasonable excuse contravenes any provision of subsection 1 commits an offense against this act. So to reiterate, if you are involved in a collision, it is an offense to leave that scene before the police arrive. The council would like to join in the thanks already offered to the Napton Hill Area Neighborhood Watch Group that played a vital role in helping to solve Mr. Williams' case. We encourage others in the public to follow this excellent example. Remember, if you see something, say something. As always, the Bermuda Road Safety Council reminds the public that driving on our roads is a privilege and not a right, and we must act with accountability and responsibility in mind. It is imperative that whilst driving, you give your full attention to the road and limit distractions. We also want to reiterate our call to motorists to drive with care, caution, and courtesy, and to reduce their speed. We all must do our part to help make our roads safer. I also want to thank, in partnership with the BPS, in helping to get a message out there and enforcing the rules of our roads to help keep us all safe. Thank you.
Just one point of clarity. The other hit and run that was reported outside of Napton Hill, parties have been arrested by the BPS, and the investigation is ongoing. but it's important to highlight the responsibility of people that are involved in collisions. I'm quite happy to take questions alongside my colleague.
Commissioner Corsley and Mr. Lister, I was just wondering what do you think you can attribute to the sharp increase of hit and run incidents within this past week, if anything?
You mind if I go first? I think one of the things that we just need to be mindful of is the investigations are still live, okay, and there is material that I'm aware of that I'm aware of material that's not appropriate to discuss at the moment, because obviously we will collect the relevant evidence and present it to the DPP. So that's not to say that what was first reported did not take place, but there are circumstances behind it. Now, we've had 2 occasions, both of which very, very different. And I think we just need to be mindful that there isn't a spike in sudden hit and run incidents, but what there is a significant spike in the number of collisions, whether it be single vehicle, car or motorbike, or other vehicles coming together, and that is rising. And the single biggest theme within that is speed and the way in which the vehicles and bikes are being ridden.
I'll just add a few more comments into it. As I can't go into the factors of causes for accidents, but what I would say is that it does come down to personal responsibility and accountability. For whatever reason, when you are on our roads, whether on a motorbike, on a car or a truck, that you have to be accountable for your actions. So there's actions involved following the correct road rules, driving in the correct proper behavior, because your actions affect not only you but others. So if you follow the rules, you drive in the correct behavior, that should minimize and limit any occurrences of any accidents. So to the factors involved, I cannot speak to, but I ask that people have personal responsibility in how they act on our roads.
Commissioner, good afternoon.
Hi there.
You mentioned speed cameras. Is that something that's just being considered? I mean, obviously the idea has been around for years.
Yeah.
And yet, is that something that you're definitely going to consider?
It's something that I'm familiar in different environments I've worked in. I mean, we have speed camera capability. We use the laser guns, and indeed, we've been targeting certain locations at the moment with people that have been driving excessive speed. And this is my point, that as we go down this road, the people being targeted are maybe not the ones that are going to be at risk of serious injury, but they are going above the speed limit, and obviously they're going to be vulnerable for prosecution. What we are looking at is, as we take forward the development of the CCTV infrastructure in Bermuda, which is currently ongoing, is some of the smart technology that can be applied to that CCTV, which can include things like average speed cameras. I actually have a stronger belief in average speed being captured as opposed to short stretches, because it shows the duration and behaviour over the course of a journey as opposed to on a very short stretch, because people sometimes slow down for that stretch and then they put their foot down or throttle down to go faster. So that very much is in discussion between ourselves and the Ministry of National Security.
Could you give us any sort of timeline as to when that might be done?
Well, the timeline is always going to be based on the kind of financial ability to do so. At the moment, it's been an issue raised about the current state of our CCTV infrastructure, which is being updated, and we're getting that back to the standard it should be. And certainly from my side of the business, Deputy Commissioner Simons is in consultation with the Ministry's office to look at working with partners about some solutions. And I would like to be optimistic over the next 12 months. We're going to start looking at a potential way forward. But it's one that we'll have to discuss very carefully with government in regards to the costings. But it returns to a point of what we would all accept is the cost of a life is always something that has to be invested in, and if speed cameras assist and contribute to that, then it's a worthy investment to be made.
But it must be incredibly frustrating for you if, at the end of the day, even if you had CCTV cameras, but still, as Mr. Lister said, it's all down to personal responsibility and personal behaviour, and there's not necessarily anything that the police can do or anybody else can do to change people's attitudes to. I mean, it seems that you have these appeals all the time.
But it's right we should have appeals, and it's right that we should reflect the true tragedy of when road traffic collisions end up in fatalities or serious injury and the impact on families' lives, because it does resonate with people. And if you take account of social media, there is a significant rise in the kind of concern and anger in regards to what is taking place. And certainly from the BPS, we had a lot of concern in regards to the nature and the way in which road users were behaving prior to curfews in some cases. And I don't say it's a flippant comment, it was almost like a Formula One Grand Prix about 15-20 minutes before curfew struck. But the nature of that sort of behaviour seems to have continued. Now we've seen curfews gone, and I'm sure all of us, as I mentioned earlier, can probably recall in the past 24 hours, whether it be a bike streaking ahead on a 3-vehicle overtake or a blind corner and there's nods of heads. And I've been in Bermuda long enough to see that there's a stark difference between what's taking place now and what was taking place maybe a year and certainly 2 years ago. So we need to be alive to that. And of course, from the BPS's perspective, I mentioned we're looking at increasing our capability to be on the roads. We're looking at the kind of data that allows us to put in key locations. And the public do know these locations as much as ours. So it's things like Paget Lights in the morning is areas of South Road. And actually the data does say that a lot of our collisions happen in daylight, they don't necessarily happen in darkness. So we've got an understanding of where the intervention can be made and we can use our resources. But it would be remiss and wrong not to say that, hang on a minute, we're chasing an issue that's being caused by the way in which people are behaving. And I don't think it's a minority either, because quite often when we talk about crime, we talk about a small minority of people committing a big amount of crime. There are people that I think go about law-abiding business every day, but when they seem to get on a bike, something happens, something's different, and people are riding in a way now that is not only dangerous for others, it's dangerous for themselves. And we know in Bermuda, and it's one of the enjoyable factors, whether it be the weather, that you can put your shorts and a t-shirt on a pair of sneakers and your helmet and you're on your bike, but as soon as you come off that bike you are going to be injured. And the difference between a minor injury, a serious injury, and sadly a fatality is very, very narrow, and that's what people have got to consider.
Acting Commissioner, Mr. Lister, when you look at people who have been driving dangerously on the roads, when you take that demographic, historically, would you say that there has been a major change in the people that have been contributing to dangerous driving on the roads? And if there has been a change in that demographic, are there any measures in place or preventative measures that are being used to target those individuals or speak to them?
I mean, surprisingly, when you start looking at the demographics, you start seeing the age group of in the 30s, because sometimes there's a comment that this is just youngsters. And yeah, okay, there's a big debate about how we educate, support and train our young people in Bermuda to ride safely on the road, because they then influenced by peers and so on. But the data actually suggests that these are people that actually have got a number of years on the road, perhaps a little bit more mature behaviour, and goes back to my point before. Maybe they are just normal law-abiding people. But there seems to be a factor, and so whether it be, and we can talk about it all day, we're coming out of a period of suppression within COVID. People are getting back to normal life on the island, and that's a positive thing. People are feeling more able to move around the island. But you can move around the island slowly, safely, and get there safely as opposed to get there early. It doesn't need you to put your foot down and drive like a bat out of hell. And unfortunately, that's the kind of behaviour that we're seeing. So that our message is very much around is getting that personal responsibility, and it does work, and I've seen it within social media that the debate does influence people. Whilst it will not influence all, but it does get, whether it be parents to talk to their children about, look, you need to look after yourself. You need to drive safely, but also parents themselves to think, I need to take my time. I need to get there safely. And it's better to get there late than not at all.
Any other questions? Thank you all for attending, and we hope to give this the coverage that we really wanted to get the message out there that this comes down to personal responsibility. Thank you all, members.